Let's dive in. Let's talk heart health. This is American Heart Health Month, or sorry, let me just start this over. I'm a little bit stumbly today. So it is American Heart Month in February, and I wanted to come and chat with you about heart healthy tips that you can talk to your patients about just to give them support that they need when they are working towards improving their heart health. So here are 9 tips to improve heart health for your patients. So we'll start with number one. One really easy way to really start working on improving heart health is checking their total fat intake. So cutting down on total fat intake if it is exceeding 35% of their total calories. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, if somebody is following a 2,000 calorie diet per day, that would mean that our target would be for them to shoot for less than 78 grams of total fat per day. So we know that total fat includes saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. So overall, we want to make sure that our total fat for the day for heart health is less than 78 grams per day if they are following a 2,000 calorie diet. So just for ease, I always like to share with my clients that that can be a target for about 20 to 25 grams of total fat at each meal if they're eating 3 meals per day. It's just a target just to keep it simple. So I hope that's helpful for tip number one. Tip number two is watching those saturated fats. So just as a simple tip to help our clients recognize where saturated fats are coming from, saturated fats are solid at room temperature. So things to think about is bacon grease. When it's heated, it's liquid. When it is actually cooled down to room temperature, it's thick. It's basically solid at room temperature. So that is a saturated fat. Other things that would be saturated fat include our butter, our coconut oil, palm oil, and things like that. So it's not that we have to restrict it, but we want to watch saturated fats specifically for folks that are having elevations in their total cholesterol and also their LDL cholesterol. So big things that are big contributors for elevated saturated fat in our diets are going to be high fat meats, also whole fat dairy products. If somebody is, working on improving their LDL cholesterol, that can be one way where we can lower saturated fat significantly. Also looking at butter consumption, palm and coconut oils, whipped toppings, ice cream, cheese, lard, things like that. So again, these foods don't have to be cut out completely, but if they are being consumed in excess, that can be a contributing factor to elevate cardiovascular disease risk. So just to link it to connecting the dots, too much saturated fat has been found in the research to raise total cholesterol and also lower HDL cholesterol and also raise LDL cholesterol. So if we are working on ways to reduce saturated fat, a combination of all the recommendations, whether it's the American Heart Association or the DASH diet or the therapeutic lifestyle changes diet, those ones combined together suggest limiting our saturated fat intake for the day to less than 7% of our total calories. So again, just streamlining it back to that 2,000 calorie diet, what that means is trying to eat less than 15 grams of saturated fat per day. So giving you an idea of what that would look like, I always encourage folks, if we want to split that up throughout the day just to make it easier, that would be about 5 grams of saturated fat or less at each meal that we would be looking at as a target. So again, just some wiggle room and some targets there. All right, so that's tip number two, trying to look at those saturated fats. The next tip is tip number three. So tip number three is choosing unsaturated fats more often. So how do we recognize unsaturated fats and how do we talk to our clients about unsaturated fats? Well, one way to think about them is unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. So when you are replacing those saturated fats, the ones that are solid at room temperature, with unsaturated fats, liquid oils, what we see through the research is that can help lower our total cholesterol, our LDL, and also triglycerides. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And if we're reducing those saturated fats, we can also support HDL, which is that good cholesterol that we want to see a higher number of. So examples of those unsaturated fats that are shown to be promoting of good cholesterol is olive oil. We also know that nuts and avocados can be a really good contributor for that as well. The other types of unsaturated fats are going to be those polyunsaturated fats, and specifically omega-3 fatty acids can be incredibly helpful with reducing total cholesterol and also triglycerides. So if we are encouraging folks to choose more of the polyunsaturated fats, those are going to be things that we can encourage, such as fish, would be salmon, tuna, herring, trout. Also looking at nuts and seeds, tofu, some vegetables, looking at things like summer squash or Brussels sprouts or winter squash. Those can be really great ways to get some polyunsaturated fats that can also improve heart health. So tip number 3 is actually replace those saturated fats with more of the unsaturated fats when we're trying to improve cholesterol and heart health. Tip number 4, stay away from trans fats. So trans fats, what we've found over time is they are not good for our heart, period. Those are things that can actually elevate our LDL cholesterol and our total cholesterol and can be bigger contributors to cardiovascular disease than saturated fat. So things that we want to look for that may include trans fats. Now, as a note, little asterisk here, side note, we're actually seeing those limited in our diet and our food supply now, but they are still found sometimes in some of our foods. So specifically things to look for might be shortening, some stick margarines can still have it, a lot of processed foods and fried foods in particular. So if you are frying a lot of foods or if you're eating at a restaurant where there's going to be a lot of fried foods, that can be a place where our patients can find some trans fats. So those are some things to consider for improving heart health. So big thing when we are working on tip number 4 is avoid those trans fats as much as we can. All right, tip number 5, something to consider would be cutting back on salt in our diet. So what we can find through the research is that if somebody is experiencing high blood pressure, one thing that we can look at in their diet is, are they getting an excess of sodium in their diet? So eating too much salt, what it does is it draws water back into the bloodstream. So if there's a lot of salt going around in the bloodstream, what's happening is it's pulling water back into the bloodstream to help kind of dilute that. And then there is more volume, which is increasing blood pressure. So what the suggestion through the research is to try to limit our sodium to less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, specifically if you are trying to manage high blood pressure. If 2,300 milligrams per day is not meeting that goal, then shooting for 1,500 milligrams per day can be something to shoot for. So again, as always, I like to share a little tip with my clients. How can we divide that up throughout the day so it's a little bit more understandable? What would a meal look like? So typically, if we're shooting for about 500 to 700 milligrams of sodium per meal, that can be a good target to shoot for, and we can get more comfortable with label reading with that. The other visual that can be really helpful for our clients if they're trying to visualize what 2,300 milligrams of sodium looks like is it's equivalent to a teaspoon, right? So about the end of your thumb there is going to be equivalent to a teaspoon, which would be 2,300 milligrams of sodium. All right, so that is tip number 5, cutting back on salt or sodium. Tip number 6 is limiting added sugar. So the American Heart Association does recommend limiting added sugar for heart health purposes. Now, for women, the suggestion is less than 6 teaspoons per day. So if we remember that 1 teaspoon is equivalent to 4 grams, so what we would want to do is for women is shoot for less than 24 grams or 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day, which is about equivalent to 96 calories per day. For men, they do get a little bit more. They have a little bit more liberalized eating pattern, and they are encouraged to reduce their sugar intake to less than 9 teaspoons per day. So again, 1 teaspoon of sugar is about 4 grams. So if we're doing 9 times 4, it's going to be less than 36 grams of added sugar or 9 teaspoons per day, which is about 144 calories that we're, shooting for in a day. So you can find all of the nutrition information for added sugars on the nutrition facts label, and we can easily help our patients actually calculate added sugars from food with this new information on the food label. So that is tip number 6. All right, so tip number 7 for heart health is eating more fiber. My goodness, we love fiber. And the thing that helps me with clients and helping them remember where fiber comes from is it comes from plants, right? So whether it's fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, there is going to be fiber in those foods. So what we want to do is eat more plant-based foods to get more fiber in our diet. Now, big thing that this does for heart health is we know that it actually does help lower cholesterol. Fiber also helps us feel fuller, more satisfied at meals. It can help with blood sugar control, helps keep us regular. So there's so many great benefits of fiber. And a lot of those fiber containing foods include a lot of vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, and big thing, they can also include a lot of water content to help us feel hydrated as well. So the recommendation for most of us is shooting between 20 and 35 grams of fiber per day. So lots of ways to get fiber in our diet if we are choosing a lot of plant-based foods. So that is tip number 7, eating more fiber. Tip number 8 for improving heart health is actually choosing alcohol in moderation. So limiting alcohol can improve heart health. And we know that the American Heart Association does recommend limiting alcohol consumption to no more than 2 drinks for men per day and no more than 1 drink per day for women. So what does 1 drink equal? What is the volume for that? So 1 drink equals 12 fluid ounces of beer, 8 to 9 ounces of malt liquor, 5 ounces of wine, and 1.5 ounces of a spirit, such as whiskey, gin, rum, vodka, tequila, etc. So the tip number 8 is alcohol in moderation. And if you are not currently drinking alcohol, you're not encouraged to start. So tip number 9, get moving. So increasing physical activity has so many great health benefits for our heart. We know that regular physical activity has so many benefits, including lowered blood pressure, improved HDL, sorry, let me say that again, improved HDL and lowered LDL cholesterol and triglycerides. We also know that it helps us maintain a healthy weight. We also know that regular physical activity improves sleep. It reduces our stress. It can help lower blood sugar. It can reduce risk of cancer. It can improve our moods. It actually helps with bowel regularity and increased energy. And we also know that it actually can help reduce pain overall. So physical activity is a really powerful tool when we're talking to folks about heart health, but so many other benefits as well. So examples of aerobic physical activity that can be really helpful with improving heart health can be things such as brisk walking, riding a bike, swimming, jogging, aerobics classes, dancing, whatever folks like to do. I always encourage folks to just pick something that you really enjoy doing. It's fun and that you can commit to long term. So that is tip number 9. So just to share with you again, in summary, what those 9 tips are is cutting down on total fat. The second tip is watching out for saturated fats. The third tip is choosing unsaturated fats more often. The fourth is staying away from trans fats. The fifth is cutting back on salt. The sixth is limiting added sugar. Seventh is eating more fiber. 8 is alcohol in moderation. And 9 is get moving. So those are the 9 tips for improving heart health. And I hope those are helpful for, sharing some tips with you and your clients when you're working on things in a individual clinic appointment, one-on-one, virtual, or even in a group setting. So happy American Heart Month, and we're going to be coming live each week this month talking about some different ways to improve heart health. But today was all about those 9 tips to improve heart health. Let me know if you have any additional tips that you offer your clients or additional suggestions that you would encourage me to include at our next live as well. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope you have a fabulous night. Take good care.